Our next guest and speaker and presenter really requires no introduction, but we're really happy to have him. He's started a very popular YouTube channel, 2-Bit Da Vinci. Got a chance to talk to him a little bit before as he arrived to prep. But Ricky Roy is a fabulous, I can tell, a fabulous human being, family man, travels a lot, but really passionate about engineering content and the technical content. And that's, again, something that we heard from last year's event was we want more technical content. And that's really why we added Ricky Roy to this agenda. So please give it up to Ricky Roy and 2-Bit Da Vinci.
Can you guys hear me okay? How's everybody doing? This is actually a pretty good turnout considering it's day 2, it's 1 o'clock. Hopefully you guys got lunch and had a little time to yourselves, but I'm so glad you guys made it. Before I talk about myself, I wanted to take a quick minute and thank all of you guys. Tesla, what's that? Right? Tesla doesn't do marketing. So what that means is it's kind of up to all of us. And this Tesla story wouldn't be possible without all the owners, all the owners clubs, and things like this, butts in seats, people talking to their neighbors. So how about a round of applause for all of you guys? Really, it's as big a part of the Tesla story as anything else. So my name is Ricky. I run a YouTube channel called 2-Bit Da Vinci. I went to school not far from here. I went to Berkeley for mechanical engineering, did about 8 years in aerospace engineering, worked for the US Navy on an F-18 fighter program, and then made the switch to software with my brother, who's right over there. When he graduated and told me how much software engineers were making, I was like, I got to make this shift. Made that shift, did software for about 8 years, and then I started this YouTube channel. One of the things I really love to do is communicate scientific engineering topics. It's something that I'm still kind of figuring it out, being not overly technical, but providing context. So what we do, we provide engineering context for the stories of our time, the things that matter most. I did a video yesterday on the room temperature superconductor, if you guys have heard about that. It's fascinating stuff. I had a really good time with that one. All right, so in 2017, I made a video on the Tesla Model 3 and the true cost of ownership. And in this video, I still remember, it was one of my first hit videos. It probably has 3 million views, which was amazing for us at the time. And I compared a Honda Civic, a BMW 3 Series, and the Model 3 in terms of long-term ownership. So we're talking 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And I still remember in the comment section, I got so many comments from people saying, no one is selling their Civic to buy this $50,000 Tesla. No one is going to do it. And the BMW people, it was, why are you picking the highest trim BMW? It doesn't make sense. It's not a fair apples-to-apples comparison. And my rationale was, well, you need to get that to have any chance of being as fast or high performance enough to be in the same realm. And then about a year or 2 later, Tesla posted a report on the most commonly traded in cars for the Tesla Model 3. Both of those cars were on the top 5 list. Honda Civic, and actually I talked to somebody yesterday who literally traded in a Honda Civic for a Model 3, and it's their favorite car. They got a performance model, and did you do that too? Yeah. So that ties into something that's going to be a theme during my talk, which is one of the hardest things in engineering is extrapolation. If you want to look at the past and use the data from what's already happened and try to figure out how I can predict or forecast what's going to happen, is one of the hardest things in all the world, right? And disruptive companies like Tesla really prove that point. It's very difficult to look at the past when you're talking about the future. We'll turn back around on that. So in the interest of forecasting, who knows how many cars Tesla made in 2020? I knew that would be an easy one around here. This is one of the most impassioned audiences I've ever spoken with, for sure. So that is correct. 2020, Tesla made 508,000 cars. They made almost, yes, there's going to be, yeah. Yeah. And I'll get back to the COVID component and some of the supply chain stuff. All right, so I think he's covered everything. Thank you so much. I'm out. No. Yes, there's that. See, this is good. Who knows how many cars Tesla sold Q2 2023, just this last quarter? About 500,000. They've sold as many cars in 3 months as they used to make in a year, right? And so now if you start to think, how many cars will they sell in 2026? Interesting, right? There's a lot of components that go into that. But recently on Twitter, I made this really bold claim. I said Tesla's going to outsell the Ford F-150 with the Cybertruck by 2025. Now, in hindsight, if I could go back, I think I would revise that to 2026. I think 2025 might be a hair optimistic. But you can imagine, just like when I made that video all those years ago about the Honda Civic and BMWs, I got so many comments from people saying, are you out of your mind? You know how many Ford's F-150s sell? Ford makes an amazing truck. It's a good truck. Do you know how many Fords they sell? You'll never come close. And I responded to this one gentleman. I said, well, that's true, but the Tesla Model Y outsells the Ford F-150 so far, worldwide, already today. Tesla's not some small company anymore. The Model Y is the best-selling car on Earth so far in 2023. Like, let that sink in for a minute. This is the company that made the Roadster. Oh, they'll never take off. They'll never do this. Best-selling car in the world, outpacing the Corolla, which was the previous winner for a very, very long time. But that's the thing. And as soon as he saw that comment, he kind of had that moment where it's like, oh, crap, yeah, maybe that's not so crazy. And you got to remember, like, every person who buys a Cybertruck instead of an F-150, that's a 2-point swing, right? So it's not as crazy as it might seem. Here's a fun fact. Ford produces an F-150 every 49 seconds from their main Dearborn, Michigan plant. A new F-150 every 49 seconds comes off the line, right? Do you know how quickly Tesla is making 3s and Ys in Giga Shanghai? 40 seconds. That is correct. Yes, that is correct. 40 seconds, a new 3 or Y rolls out of Giga Shanghai, sorry. Which is an insane number. You start to realize Tesla is a manufacturing powerhouse. I'm not saying they're perfect, but the rate of innovation, the rate of change, how they approach first principles thinking is really, really amazing. Hopefully that puts it into perspective, right? So every 40 seconds, that means they could make almost 800,000 cars a year from Shanghai. That doesn't bring up Berlin. That doesn't talk about Austin. Fremont continues to up their numbers. So shocking, but honestly, I think it will happen. Now, a quick little prediction, I think. So if you asked me to do the video, what will be the trade-in cars for the Cybertruck? Maybe some F-150 or Silverados. I think it's going to be lifestyle brands. The brand that I would be most concerned with would be like Jeep, for example. I think if you were a Jeep Wrangler fan, I think you would love the Cybertruck. Maybe like Subaru, other lifestyle stuff. I think the Cybertruck is going to be wildly popular. All the RVing, off-roaders, overlanders, people like that, yeah. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. So one thing I wanted to talk about really quick is I do talks at these like EV shows, and I was in London a couple of months ago. And I was on stage just like this with 3 other people. And somebody asked the question, who are you most excited about? Who's doing the biggest things in the world of electrification? And they go down the line and they bring up random companies that are very irrelevant compared to Tesla. And it comes to me, and I had to take a double take. I kind of looked around and I said, I feel like I've taken a crazy pill and I live in an alternate reality where Tesla doesn't exist. But it made me realize what's happened is Tesla's gone from fledgling, little startup to the world's most popular, or the world's most valued car brand. But what's happening, I think, is there's a narrative generally in the media where people have this idea that, thank you, Tesla, for kind of getting the ball rolling, for getting us started, but the big boys are here and we can take it from here. And that notion kind of drives me nuts because I don't think some of these companies, well, some CEOs have made claims. I don't think people realize how much like turmoil is on the horizon for some of these companies. My argument would be that Tesla's biggest advantages are manufacturing, vertical integration, and just vision, leadership, and innovation. So we'll talk about that, right? So the first thing, the gentleman mentioned COVID and the supply chain shortages and stuff. Ford was struggling they had F-150s that were otherwise completed, ready to sell, that they had to wait on chips. And these are not high-performance chips. These are like pretty average, ECU controllers, things that, just smaller, less expensive chips. But they had fully built-out trucks that they couldn't sell because they had a chip shortage. And they weren't alone. A lot of companies had this problem, but Tesla recorded record profits and sold record cars all throughout this period. And the reason why is one of the first things that it's not as glamorous, they don't get as much attention for, but they build so much of the stack of their technology in-house that when this happened, TSMC, other foundries that make chips called them and say, hey, we don't have that chip that you're looking for, but we have others that are similar that would work. And all the other vendors, all the other legacy OEMs were stuck because they have this supplier who builds this, who then talks to this and that. They couldn't just swap out a chip because they would have to call supplier B and ask him, hey, if the pins change, if the leads change, if the software changed, could we make this work? And it was an impossible labyrinth of dependencies. Tesla says, all right, we build all this stuff. We can call the engineers together, different architecture perhaps, different socket, whatever the case was. They built it all themselves. Within a couple of weeks, they had refactored code. And they said, yeah, we'll buy that chip, throw them in cars, and keep shipping them. That is a huge engineering, manufacturing component that no one thinks about or talks about because it's not sexy, it's not a new car. But Tesla does so much vertical integration that they're more resilient. They're less, if you do I'm a software engineer, right? So like a dependency graph. If you looked at like the web of things that have to go right to sell a car, it's complicated. Selling cars, making cars is really hard. But for Tesla, so much of what they do is in-house that they can control what they do. They can make the changes themselves. They don't have to go talk to another vendor, right? That's a big deal. The second thing is the absolutely bonkers rate that Tesla is building factories. You might not know, being Tesla fans and watching their progress. Building factories is really hard, but Tesla makes it seem super easy. They're building them at breakneck paces, and they're building them at faster and faster speeds. It's kind of insane. Now, my dad is a big Mercedes fan, so he wants an EQS. So he was thinking, they'll build them so quickly. They have all these factories already in place. But for anybody who's retooled or like refactored software, that's its own pain. If you have a working line and you have to go pull out machines and change things, that could be sometimes even more difficult. So in a lot of ways, like there's perceived benefit that other OEMs have could easily be a detriment. It could actually be more harmful. Tesla just has their line. They're building brand new things, shipping in new products. There's no legacy stuff. They're not trying to make a patchwork of duct tape and bubblegum work. They just start from scratch. So their rate of innovation, the next one I think is going to be Monterrey, Mexico, the gigafactory there. I bet you that'll be built in record time, and it's going to crank out 500,000 cars for the Latin American communities and marketplaces. So it's going to be an amazing thing that we're going to see in the next couple of years. The second thing is innovation and what I would call leadership, vision, right? I was a huge Steve Jobs fan back in the Apple days. I've always thought the man just had vision. He knew what he wanted to make. He didn't rely on like what the people said, right? Like Henry Ford famously said, if you ask people, what do you want? They'd say a faster horse, right? It would be hard to imagine a motorized automobile. It was just beyond the realm of like comprehension kind of a thing. So I was talking with Tesla Raj. I don't know if Raj is here. Raj, are you here? I don't know if he's here. We were talking about early Model 3s and how they had an Alcantara headliner, and I didn't realize that. So early VIN Model 3s came with this really cool Alcantara headliner that they then removed. And we were talking about why they did that. Like, why would they remove this cool headliner and go with this cheaper material? Well, first of all, Tesla didn't ask people's opinion. There's probably a reason why this material or this process might have held them up, materials, supply issues, and they didn't want to have all these different options. They have a really streamlined process. Tesla is like Costco. You go to Costco, there's like 1,000 products, but they're really good, and they're the best prices, and they work. You go to Walmart, there's 1 million products, 800 types of peanut butter, and it can be kind of analysis paralysis, right? But there's probably a reason they got rid of that Alcantara headliner, and it probably had to do with how they produce cars, maintaining their margins, making a lot of money per sale, and keeping the supply chain moving, which is a difficult thing to do. In engineering, oh, that's so cool. How cool is that police car over there? I don't think I saw it moving yesterday. So in engineering, there's a push and pull, a struggle between innovation and doing things the old-fashioned way, right? They're not entirely at odds, but if they were circles, it'd be like a Venn diagram where the overlap is very small. And the reason I say that is because if you work in critical things, airplanes, cars, things where people's lives are on the line, innovation is scary because if you try something new, what if it goes wrong, right? Do you want to be the first, if you're Boeing, do you want to be the first airline to have some radically new shape? It's a delta wing and it's hydrogen powered. Because if anything goes wrong, you're going to get a lot of bad rap, right? So innovation and engineering are an interesting combination. A lot of companies don't really innovate. If you look at pickup trucks, they change the grill. The grill gets 5% bigger every year. But other than that, it's kind of the same thing. There hasn't been a lot of innovation. It's body on frame. It is what it is, right? The Cybertruck is absolutely bonkers what they want to do. An exoskeleton is a radical departure from an engineering perspective. And Tesla doesn't shy away from that. They do things. For example, let's see if that was. So for example, the GigaPress. I still remember when they made, you guys are all familiar with the GigaPress, this massive machine that removes the need for all these various stamped parts and simplifies things, right? When Model Y came out, it kind of coincided with when they moved to this new method of manufacturing. And it was, at first, I remember the news from the mainstream media, it was like, this is crazy, this will never work, it'll be too complicated, it won't, X, Y, and Z. Now, every legacy automaker is moving in that direction. They're buying the same equipment, and they're moving to more gigacasting style architecture. But the reasons for why you should do this is a 40% cost. That rear assembly for the Model Y, 40% savings compared to the old-fashioned stamped and welded approach, which means higher margins, right? You make more money per sale of a car, smaller carbon footprint. There's less machines, less welding, and finally, strength and rigidity and so much else, right? Tesla is a hardcore engineering company, and that's something that I don't think gets enough publicity because it's easy to get caught up in like a new model or like the Cybertruck gets all this attention, but there are 1 million engineering optimizations that happen every day, and every little part just gets the prices down a little bit more, brings the weight down, a couple more miles of efficiency, right? I'll give you another example. Oh, what happened? All right? So, do you guys know about the octo valve? Yes? Yes? That is some crazy engineering. And the minute I saw it or I heard about it, my first thought was, why does nobody else do this? I'm sure they'll copy Tesla now. But one thing I think we should probably do, I had this rule whenever I review cars. I'm a correspondent for the Fully Charged, though, so I review cars and drive all kinds of EVs. I have a rule. If you don't have a frunk, we don't need to talk any further. Like, this is bad engineering. Like, go again, try again, come back when you have a frunk. Like, you open up some of these cars. I don't want to name cars and be negative. There's no reason for that. Open the trunk of a EV, and you see all this stuff. Like, what is this? Why is this here? Haven't you reimagined? Haven't you? Try again. Try again. And whenever I've said this comment, the comments are always, oh, you don't need a frunk. You don't need a frunk. I love how everybody else knows what I need. It's always the lovely thing about being on YouTube. But I think that's complete BS. I have children, and we have a travel stroller that fits perfectly in the frunk of our Model Y, which means the back is totally empty. We can go and do whatever else, and none of that room is taken up. So travel stroller in the frunk of a Model Y. If you have kids and you have that arrangement, why on earth would you get a car that doesn't have a frunk, right? But anyways, the octo valve is kind of genius. I don't want to make this a whole big thing. Maybe we'll do a follow-on video or something. But I recently my wife got a Model Y in January, a couple months ago. And the amount of improvement from the 3 or 4 years since I bought my 3 is absolutely insane. The car is so much quieter. It's more comfortable. The sound system is better. And I feel it every time I switch cars. I still love my performance Model 3, but her car is so cool. But one thing I noticed, I walked in one day, and I remember thinking, the car is always doing something. Like there's a system running, there's like blowers running. What the heck is this car doing? Am I losing range? I was trying to figure out is something wrong with it. And I noticed one other thing, which was every time I'd get into the car, it was just always a little bit more comfortable. It wasn't as hot as my 3 would get. I thought maybe it's some sort of like a UV layer on the glass or something. So Tesla does this thing, and this is a mode on the octovalve equipped cars, where they use the battery as a thermal battery. So what I mean by that is, let's say it's a cold day. Even on a cold day, the inside of your car will get hot from the sun beating down on it, right? What Tesla will do is run their HVAC system in reverse and pump that heat into the battery. There's a threshold range, so if the battery's cold, store that heat in the battery. Now you've gone to work, 5 o'clock rolls around, the sun's down, and it's cold. You would have lost that heat in the cabin. But instead, when you go turn the heater on in the car, you're recycling that heat back from the battery. They are saving the heat that comes in while your car is parked. What's that expression? They're playing chess and other guys are playing checkers, whatever that expression is. They are doing things that are just absolutely insanely brilliant from an engineering perspective. Now, people will bring up body panel gaps and stuff. I'm not saying Tesla's perfect. I think it's important to be critical and constantly improve. One thing all successful people and businesses have in common: continuous improvement, continuous integration. You're never done. Keep improving. But Tesla does some pretty amazing things. Software is another thing. There are some EVs that I've driven that they were almost undrivable. The software was so bad or laggy or annoying. And Tesla's out here, every time I get in my car, it's almost too much. I'm like, oh my God, another software update. Lord, maybe later. I got to drive right now. I can't do it right now. But they're constantly doing stuff. Here's 2 examples of software that is just so delightful. This is that delight, that feeling that you have years after you've bought a car. The first is, you guys notice that the Teslas have the auto high beam now? So that is a sub-component in most other cars. So most other cars buy this different, usually it's in the rearview mirror, that assembly. They'll buy this, there's a vendor that makes this part and you stick it in, it costs money. Tesla doesn't have any of that. They sold these cars with a camera and a computer, right? So they figured out that same auto high beam thing internally with their own systems. It's not a third-party part. They have cameras, they get the feed, they figure it out, and turn on your high beams and low beams. That was not even a feature when I bought my car, and it showed up. Now, it sucked at first. It was really bad. It was blinding all my neighbors and stuff. But after a couple of months, it's freaking perfect. The second one I noticed in my wife's Model Y almost immediately, and I didn't get it for about a month on my Model 3, is it'll ding you when the light turns green. Have you guys noticed this? How cool is that? Every person who's on their phone and doesn't take off when the light turns green, if they had a Tesla, that would be solved. The car just goes ding, and you look up, you go, oh, right, it's green light, I should get going. It's amazing. What a brilliant feature. And the first time it dinged, I was like, what does that sound? By the third time, I knew exactly what it was, pulled up the software notes, and I was like, oh my God, they added a ding for when the light turns green. And it's pretty comprehensive and clever. If you're in the left turn lane, it doesn't ding when the straight turns green. It waits for the corner. Now, there's little edge cases, right, like an unprotected left. Anyway, that was so cool. And when my 3 got it, I was just beyond delighted. It was such a cool thing. So my personal opinion is Tesla's true advantage is their absolute genius in terms of manufacturing, right? I think full self-driving gets most of the attention. I don't think about full self-driving very much. This is going to be controversial, and I'm sure some of you guys are going to talk to me after the show about this. But if you remember, like when the iPhone came out, I remember when the iPhone came out, first people were like, oh, it's never going to work. And then suddenly it was the best thing ever. And people were thinking every other phone company is dead. Apple just destroyed everybody. No, because 8 months later, Android was out. And it was the 1 and 2 punch thing. My prediction is Tesla's going to 100% solve full self-driving. It will 100% happen. It's going to happen. A couple years from now. It's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think. But so will, my prediction is NVIDIA. NVIDIA is one of the most brilliant companies. Outside of Tesla, in the highest echelons of the most brilliant minds, it's probably NVIDIA, Tesla, there's probably a couple others I'm missing. But NVIDIA is going to figure it out too, and other car companies are going to have it. And it'll be the Apple Android thing. And all cars will have full self-driving. All cars will drive themselves. It'll be a requirement and not really even a feature. It'll just, if you don't have FSD, full self-driving, no one's going to buy your product in like 10 years or whatever. But what's much more interesting, and I hope I've given you a little glimpse of why I think this is true, is why Tesla is going to be the biggest company in the whole world is manufacturing. They are doing things in your cars, in home automation, other things, that are just next level. And a lot of this stuff doesn't get publicity because it's not the end product. You don't really see it. You don't see a gigacasting under your car. You're not gonna pull up the carpet and take a look at it, but it's there. And what they're doing is they're bringing their margins higher and higher. They are the most profitable margin-based company by a ton. The other companies are actually, a lot of them are losing money per EV sold. And so I'm a little nervous about that because I want to see the entire industry transition. But some of these companies need to do is go back to the drawing board. Figure out how they can simplify wiring harnesses. Sandy was up here a little while ago. We had this chat maybe a couple of years ago where he's done teardowns on cars and ripped out the 100 miles of wiring harness. And he's like, what is this? Why is all this here? Why haven't you guys figured out a better way to route? Why haven't you reimagined, right? One of my favorite stories about the Steve Jobs era, and I remember this vividly, the iPod Mini. You guys remember the iPod Mini? The world's best-selling MP3 player by a million miles. It was like 80% market share. What does Steve Jobs do? Any other CEO would have been like, make it 4% lighter, hold 10% more songs, just increment on it. Throws it away and starts from scratch. And what they come up with was the iPod Nano, which was wildly brilliant and a product that would never have happened if you didn't have a clean sheet design and start it all over. So a lot of these companies that are making cars today, like I mentioned the frunk thing, right? There's a good metric. If you don't have a frunk, I think you got to go back to the drawing board and just start over. But eventually these companies have to really try to get their profit margins up because otherwise it'll just be a grind and it'll be a constant problem being profitable enough to keep building more electric cars. And so while there are more electric cars out now, my concern is still about the margin. You have to have good margins per car. If you don't have that, you're not going to invest the R&D. You're not going to do the things that Tesla does. The reason why Tesla does the things Tesla does is they make a ton of money per car. And the reason why they make so much money per car is because of a million little things like that Alcantara headliner. I kind of wish I had that. It's a great thing. Raj has it on his car. It's really nice. I don't have that. But you know what? Tesla doesn't give too many choices. They don't really follow trends. They set the path. They know what they want. And they have always been smart about understanding the value of high margin in all their cars. Because they can control all the levers. You guys have seen, how many of you guys have been noticing the wild swings in their car pricing lately, right? You got to remember, too, they don't have the baggage of a dealership. They could sit there and just control the demand levers whenever they want. Like, oh, there's a slew of cars. It's a bit of a slowdown. Knock $2,000 off the price of the 3 and the Y. Sell more of them. And then turn it back a week later. They have control and levers that other companies don't. If you have a dealership network, you can advise things, but they can, at the end of the day, do whatever they want. And during the pandemic, all these companies had $20,000 and $30,000 markups on their cars. which is insane. If I'm trying to buy a car and I'm an average person, they're already expensive to begin with, and now I have to buy a $30,000 markup. It was a very big struggle for a lot of people. Calvin knows what I'm talking about. So if you look at the time horizon, right? I mentioned early on, one of the hardest things in engineering is extrapolating data. Interpolation is easy. You have a couple of points and you figure out what happened in between. That's easy. Extrapolation is one of the hardest things. You might be tempted to think that Tesla, okay, so they 4 times more cars, so they'll make, but it's hard to know because their dominance is actually increasing. It's like the expansion of the universe. It's speeding up. I actually think people keep saying that the others are catching up. I'm not sure. I hope that they're investing as much as they need to, but I kind of doubt they are, because if you want to have a profitable business, you got to have really good margins, and that's where Tesla's just killing it. And I predict that Tesla will be one of the greatest manufacturing companies. I always try to couch it and say one of the, never be extreme, because then people can call you out. I'm going to go ahead and say I think Tesla will be the best manufacturing company on earth in about 5 or 10 years. And it's going to be, it'll be other things too. I think it'll be other things. What I think Tesla should do next is make like a heat pump system for homes or something. They need products that don't need batteries, because if a raw material supply chain issue happened, their entire company would grind to a halt. So they need some non-battery related products, and they'll get there. But I think Elon nerds out about manufacturing. If you ask me, like, what does he do? Where does he spend his time? It's manufacturing. Engineers love optimization. My wife always jokes, if she asked me to wash the dishes, which would take me 10 minutes, I'll spend 3 months building a robot to wash the dishes and then never do the dishes again. That's an engineer's mindset, right? It's like, how do you optimize? How do you make things faster? Is it wrapped up? Yeah. So I think that's just a quick look. Thank you guys so much. I'm getting the hook here, but thank you for coming out. Hope you guys are having a great time, and we'll see you around next year.